Has it ever felt like you're doing everything right, eating healthy, working out, but your energy still crashes? Or your mood swings hit out of nowhere? I know I have. What I've learned is that a lot of these issues are tied to changes in my hormones. That's where Happy Mammoth comes in. They offer a free 2-minute quiz that can help you uncover the root cause of your hormonal symptoms. It's super easy. Just answer a few questions. You'll get a personalized recommendation to help support your hormones and start feeling better. From the hormone quiz, I learned that my estrogen rises and falls unevenly. So the solution is hormone harmony, which could help with bloating, anxiety, fatigue, overwhelm, and more. Ready to start feeling like yourself again? Head over to happymammoth.com and take their free 2-minute hormone quiz today to find the ultimate answer to your stubborn hormonal issues. And for a limited time, you can also get 15% off your entire first order with our code DATEABLE at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code DATEABLE for 15% off today.
Let's talk about the choices we make because they matter. From the food we eat to the products we bring into our homes, every decision has an impact. And one of the biggest, where you sleep. That's exactly why I love Avocado Green Mattress. Their mattresses are crafted with certified organic materials designed to stand the test of time. Because sustainability isn't just about what we buy, it's about buying better. I recently tried out the Avocado Green Mattress, their bestseller that comes in 3 comfort options. My partner and I went into the store and we were lying there and really could not decide between the firm and the medium options. They were both just so comfortable. I guess we'll have to go back for another test drive. I love that they have this try before you buy option where you can visit one of their retail stores or premier retail partners to experience the comfort in person. And Avocado has easy financing options with a firm that makes your purchase way more accessible. Head to avocadomattress.com today and save up to 10% on certified organic mattresses. Dream of better for you and the planet. And I'm Julie Kraftchick,
Dating Insiders,
here to dive into everything modern dating and relationships.
welcome to Dateable. Hello, friends.
Welcome back to another episode of Dateable.
Is it getting hot in all of your cities? Is it? Is it burning up right now? I feel like summer just creeps up on us so fast every year.
Yeah, this year has been flying by. I just can't get over that we're in June. I can't get over it.
I don't want to accept it. I'm in denial.
Almost into July, which is crazy. Yeah.
Almost at Julie's wedding in August.
Oh my God. I know. I can't get over it. I'm like, I was thinking about it actually. I'm like, you and I need to meet about the officiant stuff.
Yes.
We're hitting that time. I was like, had
Yes.
it as like in the 3-month mark. And I'm like, oh my God, we're here. Or 2-month
When
mark.
you set your wedding date, I remember thinking like, God, that's so far away.
Yeah.
Like in my head, I was like, that's so far away. August. I don't even remember when you set the date. But then here we are, just 2 months away.
I mean, it's basically September, but yes, it's very end of August. I'm telling myself that because it gives me like another month to be like mentally prepared for.
Is there anything else you need to do at this point?
Doing dress fitting and that stuff.
Okay.
So I'm hoping,
Alterations, yeah.
I've been working out a lot more, which is good. Like beyond just this, it's a good like kick in the butt to start doing it because I needed to. And so I'm hoping that it fits better because I feel better, but I haven't tried it on in quite some time. So I'm a little nervous because in the off chance it fits worse, what do you do then?
But you're feeling better. That's all that matters.
I'm feeling better. So I feel like it'll fit better.
Yeah.
But, I mean, one of my best friends, she bought her dress. It was like basically fit really well, no alterations needed. And then she got pregnant and they made it work. So it's harder to do, but they can do it. I'm hoping we're not in that direction. I'm not pregnant, so.
Yet.
Not before.
But good.
Yeah.
So just basically last minute little things to do.
Yes and no. I mean, there's lingering stuff. For sure.
Okay, we won't bring those up.
We'll talk about that another time. But
She was like, don't remind me. Don't remind me. Don't remind me.
I mean, look, everyone has to do it their way. I don't know how people do this for a year and a half, like plan for a year and a half. I'm very excited for it. I liked the planning process. I think because I'm good at like tasks and getting them done.
Yeah.
And I think also having a shorter timeline has forced me to make decisions faster.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I will be happy to not have this as something occupying my brain space after it's done. So I don't know.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to do it for another 6 months to a year, personally.
Well, you're also planning your honeymoon simultaneously, right?
Yes. I think
So
that though, yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty nailed down there too. I actually found we've been doing research on like which hotels to do. I think this is definitely a role of the relationship that I lean into more.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like my partner doesn't help. He definitely weighs in and has opinions, but this is where I have more of the emotional bandwidth and energy on this side.
Yes.
And he contributes in many other ways that are different.
Yes.
But this is definitely my stronger suit and I do it. So I have been leading the charge on that and kind of been like debating a couple hotels, and everything is like, you can't cancel. So I'm like, we kind of need to make the call, right?
Yeah.
So, because my personal favorite is to like book a hotel, see if I find other stuff in the meantime. Then the rate goes down, cancel. That makes it so much easier. But yeah, they're on to us.
Do you also just keep searching even after you've booked things?
No. I think
if you don't, well, you're good.
Okay, it depends. If you can cancel it, yes. But now if I'm like, these are the rates I'm locked into and I can't get out of it, I'm not going to like even go there.
Yeah.
I also think I've looked at like every hotel that's on the islands where you want to go to. So.
You've exhausted all the options.
I feel confident in the research done.
That's all that matters.
But I'm looking to wrap that this week because that will be a huge weight off too, to have that done.
Yes. And then what an awesome thing to look forward to after the wedding.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to have a little breather. We're not going to go like immediately after.
Yeah.
So that'll be nice too.
Most people take a breather these days, huh? Like I don't hear of many people going right after the wedding.
Yeah. I mean, I know one person that did recently, but I do feel like most people don't go immediate. I think for me, it just felt like a lot. It felt like I think we're going to stay an extra day, we decided, because our wedding is over a long weekend. And initially we were leaving Sunday, and I think we're going to stay over Sunday night and just have like a day to chill.
Yeah.
Like in the same location.
Mini honeymoon.
At not a nice hotel. I'm just kidding.
A pre-honeymoon.
Yeah. It's like, I don't want to say the hotel name, but I don't know if it's like honeymoon level.
Oh, the like one that we're all staying at?
Western. It's not the Best Western, but it's not that much higher in caliber.
But at least you'll be in the presidential suite.
That's true. That is damn right. We got the nicest room they offer.
Well, that'd be nice to take to just like unwind after the festivities.
I agree. It's all coming.
Yay.
All coming.
All coming together to so close. But okay, you're almost at the finish line of wedding planning. And today's conversation is really about a woman who helps facilitate people get to that finish line. And she is a matchmaker, Matchmaker Maria. You've probably heard of her. She's all over social media, and she just came out with a book.
Yeah, we're really excited to have Matchmaker Maria because I think her story is very interesting. How she's a 4th-generation matchmaker from Greece, which I don't actually think I shared. That's where I'm going on my honeymoon. So Greece, so it's all connecting. Her job is she's the CEO of Agape Match. So she's actually matchmaking people. And, she talks about like even on her podcast, Ask a Matchmaker, and now her book, Ask a Matchmaker, she talks about like real life client scenarios. And I think she just like has such a pulse of what people are doing because she talks to so many daters in a given week. And I think it's just interesting. We like kind of go into getting a feel of what people are looking for nowadays, what it's like to work with a matchmaker, what are some of the deal breakers that they come to her for, and then like what is the approach that they would take. I think one of my favorite parts of this interview is when we ask her, like, if we were to come to you today, how would you approach it? Like, what would we be if we were your clients? So, yeah, it's really interesting to get a look in because we know matchmaking is something that's kind of a hot topic right now and interesting to people as an avenue to meet people.
It's kind of like interviewing a magician and asking, how do you come up with
Yeah.
these tricks? Because a lot of times what a matchmaker does feels very mysterious, just like how dating apps use an algorithm. Matchmakers also use their own algorithm to match
Right.
people. But Matchmaker Maria, in her new book, Ask a Matchmaker, Matchmaker Maria's No Nonsense Guide to Finding Love, sheds some light on her matchmaking process. And I was so surprised by how concrete some of her ideas are.
Hmm.
It's very black and white. And you'll see what I mean when we get into this conversation. It's just very, not what I expected.
Yeah. Cool. I still think it's funny when people ask Yue and I how we met. We're always like, our friend that's a matchmaker. Although she didn't like set us up, but we did meet through a mutual friend that is a matchmaker. So I feel like we've both kind of had like this insider look too into how matchmakers operate. I remember there was a time where I went with our mutual friend to like this like co-working cafe space, and she was like meeting up with a different matchmaker, and they were both like going through their like clients they had and like who could be a good match.
Yeah.
It was so fascinating to listen to that.
Yeah, they're like corporate recruiters. They
Yeah.
constantly have to be networking and thinking about who would be a good fit. And she was such a great matchmaker in the sense that she was so extroverted. The friend that we're talking about, she can approach anybody and strike up a conversation with them. So it's so great because she can get all these people into her database. And then she got to meet pretty much everybody in San Francisco.
I feel like you kind of have to be that way though, because it sounds like Matchmaker Maria too is like
Yeah.
always out and about in New York and like finding people in person. And obviously the internet helps too, especially like Instagram and other direct lines. The more and more like you have a presence as well. But I think
Yeah.
there is something about just meeting people and like seeing their energy. And even that, if that's like meeting someone just out in the wild or meeting them as a client, it was interesting to hear how she'll like meet with people and like kind of store them away of like, okay, this is what this person's like. Let me see if there's someone for them in the future.
I think matchmakers are getting super smart these days because I don't know if you've seen these, but I'm getting targeted ads by matchmakers.
I am not.
I get these ads of, these women being like, I'm a matchmaker. I have a client in his 50s. He's looking for a woman between, it's like my age range, my
Wow.
location. So, because they can buy these targeted ads based on demographics,
Yeah.
right? That's very, very smart. And she makes it very discreet. Like, if you're interested, just DM me. I will hide all of
Interesting.
your personal information until I think there is a match to be made.
I've definitely had matchmakers reach out to me on Facebook, just like DM me, like not like from an ad, but I don't even know how they got my information, to be honest, which is kind of terrifying. We've also heard of people say like people have approached them on LinkedIn before. And I think
yes.
And that kind of makes sense because probably the downside of matchmaking is that people tend to think like, oh, I can have more of a list because I'm paying for it. And obviously Matchmaker Maria goes into why that mentality doesn't really yield the best results. But I think like a lot of times occupation is on that list. So I can see why LinkedIn is an obvious like way to find those people. It's like, I'm looking for a doctor. Let me go on LinkedIn.
But would you respond to a LinkedIn message from a matchmaker? I'm not sure if I would.
No.
Right? Any message I get on LinkedIn that's not work related, I absolutely ignore.
I guess it just depends. Like, are you in the market yourself? Is it interesting?
Yeah.
I think when the person reached out to me, I was interested enough. No, I take it back. It was when I started dating my fiance. And I think I was like, oh, I'm not single. but I was interested to hear what they had to say just because probably this stuff. And then she's like, oh yeah, they live in Florida. And I'm like, oh.
No.
Even if I was single, like that, how is that going to work? How is that going to work? I feel like long distance, it only works like if you've already like had that bond to begin with. Like someone you've never even met before, that feels like a very long stretch.
So the matchmaker knew that you didn't live in
Yeah.
Florida?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Because they have this very small niche of people. And I think that's like where it comes in, right?
God, that's
I
such
don't
a
know.
long shot.
It's
You're
such
like,
a long
would you
shot.
move across
Yeah.
the country for this person you've never met?
But, you know, you never know. We actually get
You
into
never know.
Maria's story where she
Yes,
did
that's
travel.
true.
So we'll leave it at that because we'll get into the episode. But you know what people will do for love? People might go there. They might go there.
In fact, people should go there more often. Why don't we take more chances, take more risks, and go there, right? But don't go to Florida. Not you, Julie. It's fine if other people go, but Julie, you should not go to Florida for love.
I mean, I'm not going anywhere. Like,
I'm just saying.
I'm literally getting
okay?
married in like 3 months. I'm not going anywhere.
I'm just saying. I just don't see you in Florida. That's all.
Hey, you know, if I was single, who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe
That's
it would have
true.
been. No, it wouldn't have. I think for me, it's too much. There's like the. I keep thinking of like the "I will do anything for love" song, and it's like, what is that line? What is that line?
But I won't do that. Move
Everyone
across
has
country.
everyone has their that, and everyone has the things that are like, yeah, I still would do it. You know, to each their own.
To each their own. No judgment. No judgment
Cool.
here.
Well, we're excited to get into this episode because it is a good one. And before we do, at Dateable Podcast, that's where you find us. I wanted to do this for a couple weeks now, but I wanted to read a couple of reviews that we've gotten for How to Be Dateable. This one's from Amazon. So if you haven't got the book, of course, go get it now. And if you have gotten the book, please leave us a review. It helps so much, just like we would say with the podcast. So this review, easy read and optimistic in a sea of negativity. The archetypes are also useful. I was a skeptic at first, and then I was like, oh shoot, they totally nailed me.
So good. Here's one from Goodreads. I am dateable, damn it. This book somehow held up a mirror to every insecurity and fear I've ever had when it comes to dating. We really are all going through it. I took so many notes. I found this book very relatable, practical, and grounded in personal growth. I'm actually coming out of this book with a real mindset shift and strategies to take into the dating game immediately.
Love it.
One more from Goodreads. This book does not talk down to you. So even if you're a lonely heart like myself, there's some comfort in the fact that the writers acknowledge that even if you aren't in a relationship, you probably have some satisfying love, specifically from family, friends, and pets, and that you shouldn't take for granted. The book uses a number of interesting terms for different relationship and dating scenarios, all of which are collected in a glossary in the back. I really enjoyed the numerous charts throughout.
Love it. That is so satisfying that someone loves
Right?
all of that.
The charts that Julie drew.
I mean, the charts, I feel like, yes, there were some that were drawn, but that even just like we have a lot of like lists of like, I'm thinking of like, what's in your control, what's not, like things that are just helpful. And I think you and I think that way a lot. So it was like really fun to do it. And we also wanted to make this book fun. I always think back to like that day we were like first brainstorming. And we're like, what is the vibe that we want here? We didn't want it to be like this dry dating book that felt like a textbook that you had to do homework in. Like, no one wants that. No one wants to feel worse than you already do around dating. So yeah, go get it. Go get the audiobook. There's so many great comments. I love reading the comments about the audiobook. There's so many.
So good.
Okay. Well, before we get into it, let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors.
I am so relieved to say that the days where shapewear feel like torture devices are over. Seriously, who invented those things? They were so uncomfortable. But now, have you discovered Skims? Because I'm a Skims believer, and it's just too good to keep all to myself. The Fits Everybody collection from Skims is like nothing I've ever tried before. And here's a funny story. When I first got the cheeky bikini underwear, I thought they had sent me kid sizes because of how small they looked. I was like, this is not going to fit me. But then I was shocked that they stretch to mold to my body, and they're so comfortable. I feel like I'm wearing nothing at all. And best of all, I found the perfect color to match my skin. So these undies don't show through any white pants. Skims truly live up to the hype. Shop Skims Fits Everybody collection and more at skims.com. After you place your order, be sure to let them know that we sent you. Select podcast in the survey and be sure to select Dateable in the drop-down menu that follows.
As we're headed into summer, I feel that familiar urge to refresh my closet, but I'm not wasting money on pieces I'll only wear once or for just one season. With Quince, everything is half the cost of similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup, like 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30, luxe swimwear, and so much more. I have my eye on their Italian leather platform sandals in cashew and may just be getting these in time for my bachelorette party. Their clothes are timeless, lightweight, and far more elevated than anything else at this price. Give your summer closet an upgrade with Quince. Go to quince.com/dateable for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/dateable to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/dateable. Okay, let's hear it from Matchmaker Maria.
Matchmaker Maria, author of the new book, Ask a Matchmaker. I have it in my hands. The book is out. Matchmaker Maria's no-nonsense guide to finding love. Now, I love that you take your years of experience as a matchmaker to write a book to help people find love, if not with a matchmaker, on their own. And I really love the sentence you had in your press letter. You said, "My goal is to empower you with the knowledge and hope that amidst the ever-changing process of dating, love is always within reach if you remain open and true to yourself." Bravo. Bravo to that. No rules here.
We're aligned.
Well, there's a few rules in there.
Yeah, I feel like you have some rules that we're going to get into in this, and we're excited to dive into it.
Thank you for having me. I just want to say that really quick.
Yeah, of course. We might as well start with your backstory.
Mm-hmm.
We know it, but let's share it with our listeners. Like, how did you get into matchmaking in the first place?
So I'm a Nepo baby. No, I'm just kidding. I am not a Nepo baby.
In a little weird way.
In a weird way. I'm a fourth generation matchmaker. My grandmother, her mother, and her grandmother were matchmakers. But what they did and what I do is 100% different. You know, my grandmother got paid in fish and goat. And I talk to people of different religions and different ethnicities every day with really different dating problems that just did not exist then. Because, you know, as I lay out in my book, there is this sort of dating history that we have in the United States. And there's also a dating history that exists in Greece. And in the States, you know, dating is, you know, almost 100 years older than dating history in Greece. And like modern dating, right? And then, well, dating period, but then modern dating, it's like a whole other thing. You know, my grandmother, she died before everyone had a television in their household, let alone a telephone, let alone an entire computer in your pocket. So yeah, it's very different planets that I think we're operating under.
I'm still stuck on the fact that you come from a lineage of matchmaking, which is very cool and rare. I mean, I think about like if my family came from a lineage of bread making, I don't know if I would keep that lineage going. So at what point did you, because you obviously had a choice, what made you decide that you want to choose matchmaking as well?
I don't think I chose this. I thought I had a choice. If you look at how I lived my life, at no point did I think I was going to do this. You know, to me, these were just like stories that my mother would say of her own mother, or my aunts would say about their sister. Like it wasn't something that was ever promoted to me as a career option or path. But funnily enough, I remember going to, when I was in high school, taking those tests that a guidance counselor gives you. And it says like what you should be when you grow up. And I got high school counselor. And I remember thinking, that's wrong. I want to go study international affairs. And that's what I did. I studied, you know, I did my bachelor's in Athens. I did my master's in New York. And it was in global affairs because I really thought I would go into the foreign service. And it was, so this is the real story. This is the real how I became a matchmaker, not the cheeky fourth generation one, which is that I didn't know I was setting up people, but I wanted to network with other people that were in the foreign affairs community in New York which there are plenty of people if you think about all the consulates, the UN, and the media that exists. And I started this thing like every Thursday, let's meet at this lobby, at this hotel, 2-for-1 drink specials, and people would show up. But, who's showing up on Thursday at 7 p.m. if not single people? And very quickly, one of those couples, they went on the superhighway and they were like, okay, we're dating. Now we're getting married. And then at their wedding, just like, I think it was like 8 or 9 months later, they said, if you want to meet someone, go to Maria. And that was it. Like suddenly people were giving me their money. And again, I still thought I'm going to the foreign service, still thought, international career. And I thought of this as like a side hustle. But then I think I've always been really good at problem solving. And I happened to start my business at a time when smartphones were just coming out. So I could already see certain things that just didn't exist when I had first started dating. So if you think about it, right, like I first started going to bars in 2003. So from 2003 to 2008, I had learned how to get rejected. I had learned how to flirt. I had learned how to date without the help of a computer in my pocket.
So you've seen the shift. You've definitely seen the shift over
I felt
time.
it.
Yeah.
I remember being in New York in 2009, just before I started my business. And I remember I was out with friends and I was always like, I can't wait for them to go to the bathroom because by the time they come back, there's going to be a guy that comes up to me. I'm so tall, men like to comment on the height and I'll pivot that into
how tall are you?
Buy me a drink. I'm 5'11".
Oh.
And I wear heels. So I would pivot that. Like I knew if my friend went to into the bathroom, by the time she come back, I'll have a drink for me and her from this guy that we're going to talk to now. And then just 6 months later, same person, same bar, like whatever. And my friend goes to the bathroom and nobody's looking at me because everyone's heads down
on their
thumbing.
phone. Yep.
And this was before Instagram.
Yep.
This was before Facebook was in the app marketplace. This was just people going through their emails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that distraction, I remember thinking like, oh, okay, something's happening.
Okay. So you've seen all these shifts and then clearly like as fourth generation, even like with your family, there's been further shifts. What do you think has been the biggest shifts in matchmaking over the years? And like what makes modern matchmaking like an entirely different game?
I think it's choice. And I think that's a really interesting because if you think about my grandmother or any matchmaker in Greece at that time, because there was one in every village. It was not necessarily a unique thing. Not only was there one in every village, your parents were also involved in the matchmaking game. So there's a shift generationally. If you got married before 1980, chances are your parents were involved in the matchmaking. And if you got married after 1980, that was a love match. I talk about this in the book about my in-laws versus my parents. My in-laws met in the 70s, like 1975. And, my father-in-law saw this woman across the way and was like, that's the one. And then he went to his mom and was like, set me up with her. Like now, his mom is his matchmaker. So she called her dad. And then her dad was like, you're going on a date with this man.
Oh.
And she's like, absolutely not. And he goes, but he has a car. And she's like, fine. And that, that's their story. And that's still matchmaking, right? Because it's like no one courted, like there was courting, but no one dated without knowing what the goal was at the end, right?
My dad actually, like when my aunt became single, like after breaking up with someone, like that was his role, was to find her someone. It is kind of interesting. I never thought about it like matchmaking, but it was like your sister's single. Now, could you find her a man? Like, I feel like that would never happen nowadays.
Like, that's like if your brother.
Yeah, he'd be
trying
like,
to set
go on
you
an
up.
app. Like, what are you doing?
Right. I mean, it's funny. I remember when I was a little kid, we went to visit my mom's family in northern Greece, and I was introduced to this old uncle. He was like the meanest uncle. Barsalis is his name. Tell that he's like a mean dude, but like, why does everyone have such animosity towards him? And what ended up happening was I had come to find out at a very young age that essentially, my grandmother and all her sisters, the eldest sister had married him. And then the parents basically said to him, okay, there's a civil war going on. And they told Barsalis, I need you to marry all these sisters off too. You need to find matches for all these girls or there are going to be more mouths to feed in your house. So by the time he got to my grandmother, who was the youngest of the second youngest of the bunch, but the last to get married, when my grandfather showed up, who was just like in love with her, like bosses didn't even ask him like what his last name was. He's like, off you go.
Yeah.
You'll get married, you know? And it's just so interesting to kind of hear these like marriage stories then, because when you meet someone like that, when you know it's marriage, there is this sort of team effort that has to fall into place right away that just does not exist right now. And listen, let's acknowledge the privilege of that too, right? Which is that my grandmother and my grandfather, they were the same race, they were the same religion. You can make certain assumptions based on where they were at the time and how old they were of like their value set or how they saw the world. Like everyone at that time, there was no TV. And they all had the same access to like 2 newspapers. And those newspapers were still reporting the same facts. They might have different interviews, but everyone was living in the same reality is what I'm trying to say. And then you come to now and it's like, I think a lot of what's changed dating is that we're all living in different realities. The choice of what we get to consume algorithmically, if you think it's a choice, I don't know, but algorithmically what we're fed or the kind of news that we receive, it really does put us all in very different parts of the playing board. So like, it's not now necessarily, you know, the white pieces and the black pieces on a chessboard. Now you've got like a Monopoly thimble on the chessboard. You know, now you've got the battleship from Battleship on the chessboard. Like there's a lot of different realities at play right now. While we think like, oh, we can date people that are different than us. We can date people that maybe don't vote like us. You can also date people that vote like you and you can have completely different value sets.
Sure.
Absolutely. But I think it's really hard to date someone that isn't playing the same reality as you. And that's, I think, hurt dating the most.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I think a lot of what we hear is a lot of reasons why people are now very interested in matchmaking is because dating apps are hard. And people are frustrated and feel like they can't find anyone. So it's like a different solution. But I love how you actually say that it's not necessarily an alternative, but like they can go hand in hand.
I think people, when they come to matchmakers, they actually become pickier
Yeah.
than they would in online dating, especially when, and I mentioned this in the book too, like when the moment money is exchanged,
Right.
now I have to balance the wish list against the reality check.
Yep.
Right.
And this has happened to me so many times. I mean, I remember a couple years ago, a woman had hired me for matchmaking. And sorry, I had to breathe there because I'm recalling it. And, you know, she said, you know, he needs to be a doctor that has a house in the Hamptons, even though she's not in the medical profession. But in her mind, she wanted a doctor who lives in the Hamptons or has a house in the Hamptons and also a house in Manhattan. And I was like, okay, I can find this person, sure. But how many of them are looking for someone like you?
Right. And will you connect on any other level?
Right.
Yeah.
And she couldn't fathom, like, well, why wouldn't he like me? And I'm like, oh, I love that kind of confidence. But, you know, I still, at least on my end I want to believe I'm an ethical matchmaker. We always try to cross match. I will never introduce a client to someone that's not enthusiastic to meet them. Right, and I've never met a man in the 16 years I've been a professional matchmaker tell me, you know, she needs to be this profession.
So what do you do when someone comes to you like that?
Well, in this particular case, I had to give her money back because it was on budging and you didn't say this before we signed the contract.
Right. You're like, I can't deliver for you necessarily because it's unrealistic.
It's just too hard.
Yeah.
But, you know, I have other clients that are picky. I have a few picky clients. It's like 80-20, right? 80% of my clients are freaking awesome and I love setting them up and I love getting them in relationships. And in fact, it's those clients that usually get in relationships around, 2, 3, 4 months into the contract, which is so exciting. But 20% of our clients they have obstacles. They're a little bit more difficult. They're a lot more pickier. And I don't know if they necessarily like trust their matchmaker. And I haven't given them a reason not to trust me. I just think that that's just might be the kind of people that they are, right? Like a little more skeptical of everything.
Or it's like I throw money at it. Like I think that's what we've seen. We have a friend that's a matchmaker as well, and like she would get these ridiculous lists, and it's because people are like, "Well, I'm paying for it. I would just go on a dating app if I wanted to just find any ordinary person."
You're literally repeating a conversation I had like this morning. Yeah, that's essentially what happens is like, that's actually my least favorite comment that I might get from a client. I could have met this person on Hinge. but you didn't.
Wow.
Right. So how do
Wow.
you level set that then?
I say it. I'm no nonsense. It's on the cover. No, I still have to run a business, and I have one client that I'm thinking of right now that's probably the pickiest person I've ever met in my life. And I've told him that much as well. My job as a matchmaker is to turn every stone to find that match. And I've gone to great lengths to meet as many women as possible to be his potential match. I know that tonight, the day that we're recording, they actually have he has a second date with someone that he's really excited about. All I'm thinking about today is like, let me go to church and light a candle. I hope this works out because, when someone comes with a list that is mostly not, they already have this image in mind. They've visualized who they're looking for. I think for the frustration for us is like the lack of acknowledgement that like, this is really hard to find.
Right.
So I can't present you as many matches as I would like because your criteria is that strict.
And in turn, you would call this person picky, because I want to talk about this word picky. The way you're using it is when someone has unrealistic expectations that are going to be very difficult to be met.
Right.
But we also hear from daters that I'm too picky, that's why I'm single, thinking that they have very high standards that can't be met. And I feel like your picky clients are saying they're picky, but not in the way that you're saying picky. So how do you level set that picky is actually not a great thing?
Okay. So I think your question is so brilliant because it actually shows you the two different definitions or perceptions of pickiness. And essentially, most people that say that they're picky are not picky.
Mm.
I have a very high threshold of what I think picky is. It's exactly what you said, that there are people who have standards, and I think those people are not necessarily picky. I think that they're not being provided the kind of opportunities to meet those people that will hit those standards, right? That's not picky. That's scarcity, right? But then there are people that are picky that fit my threshold of picky, where there's a lack of emotional resilience. There's a lack of self-awareness of not only is this person that you're describing rare, you also have to hope that they're also looking for someone like you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that pickiness comes in. Now, I'll give you an example of someone who could be perceived as picky, but she provided herself the opportunities to meet someone. I used to have a client she was a Nigerian American woman, and she was very tall. She was 5'11", entrepreneurial, and she wanted to get married to a Nigerian American man. And she said he has to be successful in whatever he does. He must be over 6'4". And this person lived in a city that is white with an H. Mm-hmm. She's probably the only Nigerian American in that city, with the exception of maybe her parents. And so, where is she going to meet not only this Nigerian man, but also this very tall Nigerian man? So I said to her, look, I think it's great that you want to date within your culture. I think it's great that you want to date someone who's, as successful as you. Like, it's okay to have these certain criteria, but we have to provide the opportunities, because in this city, you're going to be seen as picky, but I don't think you're being picky. So let's brainstorm a little bit. And we brainstormed a little bit, and we would come to find out that in a month, there would be a Nigerian American Chamber of Commerce event happening in Texas.
Oh my God.
So I made her fly out to Texas, and she met two men there that fit the height criteria. They were both,
Wow.
I think one was an entrepreneur, one was in finance. And, she would end up marrying one of those two men.
So you lean into it then. Like, you're okay leaning into people's...
Yeah. Find the
But
opportunity.
you have to find the opportunity. You have to get really creative. And men that I'll meet, they'll say something that's like, okay, this is what you're looking for.
It's just an interesting parallel because, some school of thought would be like, okay, and we've even talked about this, like in our book, of like, how do you extract this out to like your values more instead of staying in this pigeonhole? So that's one option if you want to stay in your environment. Or the other option is you lean into your very specific thing you want, but you got to seek it out. I think where we hear people of just like, there's no one good in my city, but then they're not willing to go to a different city or go to a different environment. So I kind of like that you have this option. You as the dater get to decide what is the actually more achievable, sustainable thing for you.
I think about when I met my husband, right before I met him. This is talked to death in my book, but I really enjoy the company of my friends and their boyfriends.
Yeah.
You know, think about who your friends are, right? They're people who likely have the same outlook in life as you. They might find the same memes funny. I know I'm pretty outspoken, that might be a little outspoken too, you know, and just kind of think about who your friend group is. And I remember two of my friends, one was married and one was dating. They're married now. Two men that I thought were just like, oh my God, they really got great guys.
Mm.
And I said, okay, if you ask me what I want that. I don't want their boyfriend, but
Yeah.
that's the kind of relationship I want. And so what I did was I told both men, I didn't ask them to set me up. I said, next time you're out with your friends, please invite me. And a week later, one of them calls me back and he says, hey, you told me to invite you next time I'm out with my friends. I'm going to be in Boston. We're going to this bar. You should come. And I didn't say, oh, I met New York. I didn't say any of that. I was just like, you got it. Went on Amtrak, got myself a ticket, went to Boston. And sure enough, that night I met 9 of his friends and 5 of them were there with their girlfriends, but 4 of them were single. And I hit it off with one of the guys who would end up being my boyfriend and then my husband and now the father of my kids. But also, I didn't know any of these men, right? These are all new people to me. But now that I've known them for more than 10 years, I'm not saying it would have worked with any of those guys, but I do believe that birds of a feather flock together and like good men are friends with other good men.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I was looking for, was like someone that was smart, more logic based, I suppose, because there's different versions of smart, had emotional intelligence, could empathize. Like these were the certain things that I saw in my friend's boyfriend. And I figure, well, he has to be friends with people that are like him.
Yeah.
Makes
See,
sense.
that makes sense because you're going off of a feeling of a person, like the values of a person and the way they are, the essence of this person. But in the example of your client, which is still, I'm just a little shocked by it, is what are the chances that she meets this tall Nigerian man who is successful, who's also a good partner? I guess it's like finding the opportunity to get after the qualities that you're picky about doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to find the right partner, right?
And you have to think about the core difference between these two scenarios is when I met my husband, we had accountability partners between us. We had mutual friends. So you can't act like a dick, right? Whereas in her case, it's exactly what you said. Like, this is a stranger, but isn't what all of dating is on the vibes in the beginning. And then you have to keep dating them to see if you connect. She had met 2 guys there and she started talking to them and, you know, which one fit better? Which one fit the values or the lifestyle or the future milestones that she wants to complete? Like which one had? And I think that's who she ended up picking. It could have not worked out with him at all. But, you know, you don't know. They could have also had friends in common without realizing it too. If you're talking about like a chamber of commerce event that's specific to a certain ethnicity or religion, compatibility can sometimes be in the form of curiosity too.
I want to dive into this even more, but before we do, let's take a quick break to hear from our partners. Yeah, I mean, I hear in Yue's question though, kind of like, okay, if we get so focused on these more like superficial traits, right? Like in the, I mean, I guess like your culture, I don't want to call that superficial. There are very much factors that play in there. But let's say height, for instance, someone that's just like unwilling to budge on height. If you get so caught on that, like, are you sacrificing other qualities? And like, as their matchmaker, are you guiding them or are you just being like, okay, this is what you want. I'm going to find you that.
I mean, I remember when she told me the height thing, I was just like, please be for real.
Yeah.
And I hate talking about height because I'm a tall woman too. And I don't get it. I think I say this in my book too, where I'm like, you know, people always say like, he needs to be taller so I can feel more protected. And I'm like, well, really what you need is a password manager and some Purell. Those are really the only risks to your safety. But I think people that go into these height requirements, they know that they're being picky. I don't know if the height thing necessarily overlaps some other characteristic because those things will always show up. I just had a client actually tell me that, you know, he's dated models in the past and he's open to dating models right now. And what was interesting about that conversation is that he's like, you know, my experience with models has been that, you know, they can have really great days and then really bad days. And I asked him, like, you know, that's his perception, of course. And I said, like, tell me why you have that perception. And he said something along the lines of, well, you know, if they get a blemish, their entire like self-worth can collapse because they probably can't, they might not be able to get a job that day. And I said, okay, so has this been an issue for you when you date women that are models? And he's like, yeah, like it comes with its own like different validation systems. I just thought that was interesting. I'm just sharing it. I hear a lot of things. I meet like between me and my staff, we meet 40 women or men.
Yeah,
a week.
I'm sure. All kinds of interesting
I guess
people.
that's actually an interesting piece of like, what deal breakers are you seeing as the biggest ones nowadays that maybe have changed over time?
Deal breakers have changed so much since I started my business. So back in 2008, 2009, the deal breaker was smoking.
You never hear that anymore.
No, I never hear that.
Because no
one smokes anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, I don't even hear stuff about vaping.
Yeah.
I hear about like people are a lot more marijuana friendly than ever before. Then the major deal breaker started in 2015, 2016 when President Trump announced his candidacy.
Yep.
And it actually started with Trump supporters. So Trump supporters, they didn't want to be judged. So they would tell our staff and myself, like, I only want to date other Trump supporters. It was only until he became president in 2016 when the other side, independents and Democrats were like, I don't want to date a Trump supporter. And that was like the core, like, it's crazy how that's like the deal breaker. And the only time it changed, it's changed 2 times since then, is I remember even having a call with the online dating apps about this because I get to see things on the ground that they might not have access to sometimes. So we'll have like phone calls.
Right.
And I remember telling them in the fall of 2020, hey, there's news about a vaccine coming out soon. And on what we're hearing, because we meet 40 people a week for at least an hour each, right? We're hearing from people that they better be planning to take the vaccine. So not even about vaccines yet. They better be planning to take the vaccine. Became the deal breaker.
That was huge on dating apps too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember even made a prediction video like in December 2020, like the next this is this. And then sure enough, like 3 weeks later, all the apps had the vaccine badge, right? Then was it 2021 when Roe versus Wade was overturned?
Is it 21 or 22?
Well, like when that first, when it got like leaked.
Yeah. Okay.
In June 2021, that was the craziest month because I had women updating their profiles, adding that as a deal breaker now. Even conservative women were saying like, he needs to believe in a woman's right to choose. And that has been the number one deal breaker since then. That has not budged.
Oh, so no current new deal breakers.
Trump is the
Elon.
It doesn't leave. It doesn't leave. Like, Trump supporters don't want to date beyond, and the people that didn't vote for Trump don't want that either. So there's definitely a schism. But the woman's right to choose, that's so huge. Now, I think the next big one, I see this already in Europe. It's been like this in Europe for a couple of years now. Their number one deal breaker is acknowledging climate change. Whereas in the States, I don't think anyone's talking about it.
We have too many other issues to worry about.
Yeah. Well, think about it. In Europe, they're not thinking about abortion. Yeah. It's like protected there. They're not thinking about guns. They don't have guns, so
or healthcare.
Yeah. They don't have a Luigi.
So if we came to you and we were like, Maria, we need your service, how would that go down? Like, what would you ask us? How would you vet and figure out, the right match for us?
Ooh. Okay. Well, we would ask a ton of questions. We want to get to know your temperament by asking you those questions. So I want to know if you're like the planner or the plannee in your friend group.
Okay.
I want to learn how you problem solve. I want to know more about your worldviews and what kind of media do you consume and what do you like about that media? Some people don't consume any media, so that gives me like a profile on them. I do ask what you have found yourself attracted to. I always ask what you're attracted to personality wise before I go into physical looks. Mm-hmm. People give way less about physical looks now than ever before, which is nice to see that.
Oh, why do you think that is?
People used to give me lists of what someone needs to look like. It's very different now. Now, height is still in there, which is the most annoying thing in the world because I don't match on height. But, I think it seems like women are a lot more open-minded than we've ever seen them be, which is nice. We would also ask about your lifestyle. We would ask about your family, both biological and chosen. Some people don't have a relationship with their parents. That's fine. Tell me about who you call when you're having a bad day. Who is the chosen family here? So we're trying to create a whole profile on you to, understand who is the right fit here? And then when we start looking for matches, we first search, we have a really extensive database. We first start searching on the easy stuff like, okay, here's the age range she was comfortable with. Here's the races that she told us that she finds herself attracted to, or the religions that she is open to dating. We'll throw in a few curveballs in there that maybe they didn't say, but we know a little better. We're like, let's add that into the list too. And then we'll go profile by profile and start reading the bios that someone submitted. And we're looking for certain keywords to see, people will tell you in their own words sometimes about what they're like and what their expectations are. So from there, if we think, okay, this person seems interesting, either myself or a member of my team, we will schedule an interview and we'll meet that person. And then if, we don't tell them about our client, we just want to learn who they are with open cards. And then once we've gotten to know them and we ask them pretty much a lot of the similar questions, then we start to think, okay, could this be a match for this client or maybe another client? If we think it's a match, we'll tell them about our client. We'll say, hey, okay, let me tell you about my client. XYZ, and we try to measure their enthusiasm. And if they seem like they're like, I want to totally meet this person, then we're like, great, let's start coordinating the date. And then I would go back to my client, have a match for you. And I would present to you their profile and like, here's what I learned about them during the interview. When are you available so we can coordinate your date? And we typically coordinate both first and second dates for the client because it's not enough to go on first dates, I think, through a matchmaker. To make a relationship happen, you have to cultivate. And, if I leave it to some people, one, they'll never go on a first date if I just exchange numbers. I've learned that I have to coordinate and I won't even share phone numbers. Like we'll share numbers like 2 hours before the date in case of emergencies, because I don't want you canceling.
So when you say you coordinate first and second, is that by default? Or if like the person came back and was like, I never want to see this person, you would honor that?
We would honor that, of course.
Okay.
I only set up a second date if both of their first dates were positive.
Got it.
And we would receive their share availability again. I will say half of my clients, they'll set up the second date on their own while on the first date. But the other half will be like, I don't know. Like this actually just happened last week where my client went out with this woman. She actually goes to my church and they had a great time. I think she felt like, oh, he might not be into me. So like, it's okay, whatever. But he was really into her. So one of the matchmakers calls her and she's like, dude, he really liked you. You need to go out. Like, do you want to go out again? She's like, absolutely. I think it's a first date. People are nervous. And they're going on a second date and it's an activity date in a couple of days. So we're monitoring that as well.
I like that you coordinate the first date. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles in modern dating. It's just getting to that first date. But I do wonder though, because Julie, remember that app Whim?
Yeah.
There was an app back in the day that would set up first dates for you. It would choose a place, choose a time, and you just show up with your match. And people would often flake probably because it's a free app. There's no accountability. But I like that you don't exchange any contact info, so you can't really flake, and you're the one keeping both of them accountable.
Yeah, we haven't had any cancellations in 16 years. Like we've had to cancel dates 3 or 4 hours before because we've told our clients or matches, like if you are having a bad day, I don't want you going on this date. Just tell us ahead of time so I can reschedule this date for like the next day.
Yeah.
And that's happened maybe a handful of times in the 16 years. There was this one woman, I'll never forget her, in 2014. She was on the way to her date. It was August 2014. I was on a cruise ship. And I'm getting a phone call from her and she's like, I'm on my way to the ER. I broke my leg going down the stairs, leaving my apartment.
Yikes.
And I was like, oh, so you haven't been on the date yet? She goes, no. And I'm like, okay. So I call the guy and I'm like, hey, she was on her way to the date, but she broke her leg and she's on the way to the ER. And he figured out what ER she was at. And he went there to make sure she was okay. So they still had a date.
Wow.
Oh, and she didn't lie.
No, she didn't lie. She was, oh my God, that never crossed my mind that someone would lie about that.
He's like,
you never know.
Every ER, he's like, why can't I find her?
They dated for like 3 months.
That's amazing. So I want to go into temperament because you brought it up and I actually found this really interesting in your book, how you talked about like your grandmother and like, do I actually use the same methodology and all of that? And you basically were like, it's a whole different game, but temperament, that's the thing.
That's the thing.
Could you share more about like what that means to you? And because you said it even as like the first thing you ask.
So personality is made up of 2 things, your culture and experiences and your temperament. Your temperament is essentially nature. It's what you're born with, right? And your culture and experience is nurture. right? It's what you're learning. It's your environment. It's your parents. It's your siblings. Your siblings can have a huge influence on the personality that you have and like what sibling order is and all that stuff. But your temperament is essentially what makes you uniquely you, right? Like how much of a risk taker are you? Are you the kind of person who needs to plan all the dates or needs to plan the group vacations? Are you the kind of person who looks for patterns even when they're problem solving? Or are you the kind of person who wants to take every single variable into account before making decisions? So temperament has this way of dictating how we show up in all of our relationships, be it romantic, interpersonal, parents, children, whatever. And what my grandmother did is, she didn't have the works of Dr. Helen Fisher, who's this world-renowned cultural anthropologist who studied romance. She had her own methodology, which is assigning God's names to people. So for instance, if they were more traditional, they would be considered like an Era or a Festus, right? And so these are people that are traditional, that go by the rules. They like a sense of hierarchy and loyalty, and they're very reliable. But if they were an Aphrodite or an Apollo, which are more explorers, these are gods that would have maybe been described as like creating mischief or being a little entrepreneurial or, being the fun of the party. These would be what Dr. Helen Fisher would say is our explorers. And so if you look at now, like how my grandmother's matching, if she's hearing from her community, from her little village, so-and-so always has new ideas. So-and-so can't just sit in one place or they get bored. So-and-so has entrepreneurial qualities. So-and-so likes to travel to different villages. Then that person's match is a person who is probably very similar in that temperament as well, not someone who might anchor them down. Because even if you look at Helen Fisher's inventory system, which is her modeling in temperaments, you see the same thing. An explorer is a match for another explorer. A builder is a match for another builder. So I talk about this in my book in way more depth, of course. But what's important here is that these characteristics, if you think about people and you start putting them into, let's call them buckets, you do start to see that there are 4 types of people in the sense of like which of these characteristics seem to shine the most. So if you look at, for instance, myself, in Helen Fisher's inventory system, I would be considered a director. In my grandmother's system, I'm Athena. And that is someone who has, natural leadership qualities, a strong problem solver, and extremely stubborn. Right. And if you look at my husband, he's a negotiator. And what you see with that sort of temperament style is that we are a match. In Helen Fisher's inventory system, she believes that director and negotiators are a match for each other because directors can act really in haste, whereas negotiators can take their time doing things. So at least when they're paired together, the negotiator can slow down the director when they're just moving too fast. But the director can also help the negotiator execute whatever they're working on. And there's this sort of balance. I feel like if I were with like another director or a Zeus in my grandmother's system, it would be very hard. I've dated other Zeuses. And what's hard about it is that because I'm quite competitive in nature, even though I don't want to be, it's just how I'm wired. I've dated other men who might have those qualities too. And I don't want to be put in a position where I'm competing with my partner. Right. I've been there. It sucks. You get your feelings hurt. It's just really hard.
So this is the part that I always wonder about because I feel like there's certain things that complement you well.
Yeah.
And then there's other things where it's good to be similar and have that same temperament. Like, how do you decide what's complementary and good for partners to be together versus like what will cause issues later? And then also I think about it like it might show up slightly different with different partners. So maybe in one person, they aren't that competitive, but there's something else that like is the thing that really gets you.
Well, the cool thing is that in Dr. Helen Fisher's inventory system, when you are assigned a temperament after you take a test, which is free online, you get a primary and secondary. So you could be, for instance, a director builder, and your partner could be a builder explorer, which is duality in its finest because you have 2 opposing things together. But it certainly happens to a lot of people. It doesn't mean that that director builder and then that builder explorer are not a match for each other because you have a lot of temperaments coming together. It's that by knowing what your quirks are, what makes you you on a genetic level, it's a lot easier to communicate that and help people understand your triggers, help people understand, how you react to things. Like I used to have this problem with my husband. When we had started dating, I wanted to go on a trip and he said, "Oh, I'll take care of it." The thing is, he's not taking care of it. He's Googling different things. He's making an Excel sheet. He's Googling more things, and he's just having decision fatigue. And it would frustrate me because I didn't know yet his temperament, but it was frustrating me, like him not executing, like, "Oh my God, let's book the tickets. Like prices are getting higher. Oh, now the dates have passed. Now we're not doing shit this weekend." But the moment I was able to understand, like, oh, this is who he is. He's not lazy. He's not procrastinating. He's indecisive, right? And that's part of what comes with that sort of temperament, is trying to look at all the variables so you don't make the wrong decision. I was able from then on to maneuver like, hey, I'm going to be planning the trips, which I love. It's in my nature. Tell me 2 things you want to do while we're on this trip so that I can incorporate him in it as well.
Sounds like my relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of relationships, actually.
I mean, the moment you recognize like where you are in that relationship, it takes away all the resentment.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier. You're happier. I can't, it's funny because sometimes I'll talk to women who are like the planners and they're like, "I just want him to plan something." And it's like, why? So you can like belittle it the entire time you're on it.
So it's not that they're a bad match. It's just understanding the strengths of the other person.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, look, even in Helen Fisher's inventory system, 2 builders are a really good match for each other because, people who like rules and a certain process of things, they can be a good match because they can recognize the order of things in the other person. But sometimes people are also, even after a certain age, they're settled in their ways.
Yeah.
They might be unwilling to compromise.
So with that in mind, and at the beginning of this review, you talked about how we're just so different. We're almost too different. And we're all over the map. You got the chess pieces and all the Monopoly pieces, all the different pieces on one board. And we also hear from daters, like, I'm having a hard time filtering and figuring out where to even start because there's so many options. I want to be open-minded, but I got to start somewhere that's foundational. Do you think temperament then could be that first filtering phase for people to stop throwing, darts at the board and hoping that someone sticks?
I think understanding your own temperament and being able to spot it in others can make dating a lot more informative as you go through life. You will discover quicker who's a match for you versus who's not. You will also mourn less time. I actually had this conversation yesterday with a woman. She's done one of our programs and, her boyfriend and their parents met over the weekend. So she was telling me all about it. And she said, this would have never happened if you didn't do this to me. And I was like, what do you mean? She said, in the past when I would be dating someone for 3 months and we would break up, I would mourn it for 3 to 4 months. I wouldn't go on any dates, but I used understanding like, okay, we weren't a temporal fit. He had this attachment style. These are my values that I set out from, the Matrix. This will make more sense when you read the book for the listener listening. But after I did all these things, I knew, oh yeah, this wasn't a match. I can just move on now. And I think that's my favorite part about, all of the dating advice I've been able to provide to people over the last 16 years is that people do break up faster. People mourn way less time. Like they are able to get closure much quicker. People date fundamentally different after that. And that fundamental difference is the intention of finding someone who shares in your future goals, which we talked about before about choices and stuff, but also understanding like who you are as a dater, like what makes you this unique person that they would be losing out on if they don't call you back. Like there's no magic formula in this book, but there's a shitload of storytelling and, how to feel more empowered in how you decide who that person in the future is for you.
Let's take a quick pause to hear from our sponsors. So you talk, I think one of my favorite parts was around levels of compatibility. You talk about physical compatibility, spiritual compatibility, intellectual compatibility, financial compatibility, and emotional compatibility, which all sounds great, but that's also a lot. Like
it's 5 pillars.
Yeah. Like how do people though feel like they either can determine what compatible means or trust you and your team to find them compatible matches.
So what you just described are the 5 pillars of compatibility, and it's laid out in the book, and each one talks about like what you should be looking for. I'm not telling you what to look for. Everyone has different things that they want physically, financially, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. And all I'm doing here is asking you in the book, after I describe each one, like, what does your ideal partner have here that you feel would respect you, that you feel you could respect in them, that you feel, keeps you open-minded or curious about this person. And, you are then redirected to fill out this matrix. And after you fill out this matrix, then you're like, what the qualities you are looking for in a potential person and a potential partner, after you fill that all out, then it's asking you to like, okay, now circle your top 10. And you can see in that like, these are actually the things that you're dating in. And I say it this way because not everyone is going to have qualities under all 5. I remember when I did this to myself back in 2012, I only had 2 things under spirituality, but under intellectual or emotional compatibility, I had more than 5 traits. I had, I think, like 7 and 10 respectively. And, what that tells you is that, okay, I'm actually looking for a match that, shares in my sense of humor, shares in how, the lifestyle that I have intellectually built for myself. And I'm also looking for someone who is emotionally resilient, knows how to say sorry, knows like strong conflict resolution skills. And of course, you're not going to know these things. The book does not tell you that you're going to know these things right away on certain people, but you can discover these things within the first month. And there is a way to discover it, right? It's paying attention. And I do give lots of tips of like the things you need to pay attention to. But this is what I mean by like breaking up faster, right? Like I don't want you dating someone for 6 months to figure out if you're emotionally compatible. You're not. I already know that.
Yeah. And you say that emotional is the most important in your opinion and physical the least. Why is that the case?
So I'm not saying it. The studies say it. So science says it. So in long-term compatibility, physical compatibility significantly drops after a couple of months, sometimes even after a few dates, right? You saw someone, you thought they were cute. Okay, now moving on to the rest of the stuff, right? We know that like physical looks does not hold any water if they don't know how to talk to you, if they don't know how to manage their money, if they don't know how to fight fairly, right? It doesn't matter if they're hot, that goes out, right? But what has time and time like shows us like, why does a relationship fail? It almost always revolves around emotional compatibility and financial compatibility. Financial compatibility is your lifestyle, right? It's not just your socioeconomic status. It's how you spend your time, how you value the way you spend your time, and how you value the way you spend your money. And where do those shared goals come into play? But when you look at divorces, like no one is divorcing someone because, they don't know how to do a crossword puzzle or, because they, maybe put on 10 pounds or 20 pounds. That's not where it is. It's always like, because I don't have the emotional bandwidth in this relationship to continue, or because I don't trust them with how we spend our time or in how we spend our money. So those are pretty important because those are the things that you kind of have to lean on, especially when you're having bad moments. You have to have all those good moments, in the jar. Like think about like putting like gold stars in the jar. So that when you have those bad moments, you have like things to lean on versus if it's depleted, you're kind of running on empty.
In Chinese culture, we have a very rich matchmaking history. And if you go to China, everyone's a matchmaker. Your neighbor, the person cleaning the streets, like everyone is matchmaking someone in their family. When my baby cousin graduated from college, she had a queue of men, of just relatives being like, you got to meet my neighbor's kid or my cousin's teacher. There's just always matchmaking going on. And the first level of compatibility that is the most important for matchmaking for Chinese couples is always socioeconomic, and which then translates to lifestyle. And I guess according to this would be financial, because the belief is it's not about how much money someone makes, but it is their attitude on how they want to live their life. And if there's a mismatch, there's always an aspirational lifestyle and someone who's trying to keep up. And that creates resentment, that creates money problems, that creates emotional issues, and it creates this lack of safety in that relationship. So thoughts on that?
No,
Because that's,
I love it. It's exactly what I mean. I even say in the book, like financial compatibility, read that as lifestyle compatibility. And that is 100% on the dot. And it's actually one of the reasons why I resent certain dating coaches in the industry who go online and say stuff like, you say you want a guy who has at least a bachelor's degree and is 6 feet tall and is Jewish. Like I'm literally word for word saying what a dating coach said, but there's only 0.4 men that are like this in the world. And I'm like, this is stupid. Like, what are you saying? She should date a garbage man? Like with no degree? No disrespect to garbage men with the degree, right? But fine. She could go date a garbage man. Where is she going to meet him? Because last I checked, socioeconomic circles are also your friend circles.
Yeah.
Right? Most of your friends share in the same socioeconomic status. You might have a few outliers here and there, but they bring something else into the friendship. Maybe, they're extremely wealthy, so they're paying for the trips. Maybe they're working at a nonprofit and not necessarily bringing it up, but they have a lot of emotional bandwidth for that friendship. But by and large, most people tend to associate with other people in their socioeconomic circle. So I think it's such a cheap shot to people when they say stuff like, just be open to, men who have no degree. And there's a different way to say that, right? There are a lot of men in the trades. Should your circle include a man in the trades, which means that you might share certain things in common, absolutely be open to him, right? But, what is being promoted to us is this like Hallmark way of thinking. Like big girl from the city goes back to her town and meets a farmer.
You never know mentality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I just, I don't know. Look, some of my closest friends are in the trades. I think they're fantastic people. I don't have a problem with I don't, but they're also in my circle. Like we shared other things in that socioeconomic status. We might not share the same goals or the same intellectual compatibility, which is why it didn't work out. Like for me to consider them as a potential mate. But yeah, I think socioeconomic status is huge.
So I want to pivot a little because we talked at the beginning about rules and you said that you have a lot of them. So I want to go into them, especially, something that I've heard you talk about on Instagram and on other podcasts too, is your infamous 12 date rule. Why do you think 12 dates is the number and necessary to figure out if you have this compatibility?
Let me take a sip.
You're like, here we go.
Gotta get ready for the monologue. I actually mentioned this in my book. I thought 12 was just a funny number. We're as humans, we love the number 12. 12 months, 12 constellations, 12 signs. We love a number 12. 12 gods. The 12 is part of our human history across all cultures. So to me, when I had said 12 back when I created the 12 date rule method, it just happened to make sense to me to say 12. Before I published it, though, I thought about is that the number that I think would work? Yeah, I actually thought about it a lot. Never in my wildest dreams did I think, A, people were going to listen to this because it's the most insane thing to say out loud. But B, I've had thousands of people get engaged using the 12 date rule method. There is no shortage of DMs every single day. Or some email from a woman showing me I'm a 12-date rule bride. They even have their own logo. They even have their own merch. And it's just funny to me to kind of experience that. But the 12-date rule is essentially a method to help people date thinking about emotional compatibility before physical compatibility. And so I know this scares people. And I want to say that I don't expect you to go on 12 physical dates with someone before getting intimate. There's a Matchmaker Maria date math. So, a date is either a phone call, a video call, or an in-person date. That's a minimum of 20 minutes, maximum 3 hours. And you can have up to 2 dates in one day. And 3 of the 12 must be in-person dates. And so what these rules do is, 1, make you much more aware that you could be falling in love with someone over their texting habits when that counts for nothing. Texting counts for nothing in the 12-day rule, which means that you actually have to ask them, hey, can we FaceTime? I don't want to text anymore. And if you don't feel comfortable saying that to someone you've been on one date with, ask yourself why, right? So it makes you there's a lot of introspection here about who you're dating and why you're dating. But also in that process of those 12 dates, I want you to discover other things because now you're having more phone conversations, you're having video conversations, you're meeting in person. You're not meeting at your home or their home. The 4 things I want you to ask yourself are, what are they like when they're having a bad day? What are they like when they're having a good day? How do they treat you when you're having a bad day? And this is the most important. How do they treat you when you're having a good day? And I'm going to tell you that last one, that's the kicker, because I don't want to hear from another woman telling me that the guy she dated made her cry on her birthday or wasn't completely pumped up when she got a promotion. You should be dating someone who thinks that the rainbow comes out of your butt. And 12 dates is enough to discover a lot about someone if you're doing it in this intentional way. I mean, if any of you open up your phone right now, look at the last phone call you had. It's very rare to see a phone call with someone for more than 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. So that means you're intentionally calling them. You have to fill up that time getting to know them. And not necessarily because that's what partnership is, right? Is talking about the mundane, right? So we're trying to establish these sort of foundational blocks. Now, a lot of women have messaged me saying, oh my God, I didn't get to 12 dates. It's okay. Rules are meant to be broken. It's not the end of the world. The point is that you have a lot more control over how this goes versus how it doesn't. And I'll tell you something. You're not meant to go on 12 dates with everyone. You're meant to break up with most people that you meet. And without the distraction of sex, it makes it much easier.
I like that.
That's really my only rule. The rest of my stuff in my book is theories, like the Stanley Tucci theory, the green theory, the everything shower
What's
theory.
the Stanley Tucci theory? My friend is in love with him.
Is it a man or a woman?
A woman.
Okay, yeah, that's good. See, the Stanley Tucci theory is basically if a man thinks that Stanley Tucci is great, that means he's great in bed.
Ooh.
Oh.
It means he's more for your pleasure.
Oh my.
I mean, we definitely need to leave people to check out the book for all these theories, because there was also the lilac one. You have a lot, which is very interesting.
I love the lilac theory. Let's not talk about it. Let people
We're not
buy it.
going to. We're going to leave it.
But you know what, though? I've tested it. I've tested it on so many people, and it works.
That's a great cliffhanger.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, this conversation has been so fascinating in general. I think there's a couple things that I took away from it. First and foremost, of course, seek out professional matchmakers, but also how do we let people in our lives be more matchmakers? And I loved your story about your friends, boyfriends at the time, that you weren't oh, set me up in this way that feels so awkward. It's invite me next time you're hanging out and make that effort. And I think that leads me to my second takeaway is the end of the day, we choose what effort we're going to put in. We either make effort to adapt our lists and expand them out, or we make effort to get into environments where we're going to find people that meet the criteria that we want. I think that either is a viable path depending on you and what you're looking for, but ultimately there needs to be some effort made. And when we go to matchmakers, there also needs to be effort made. We didn't even get into this, but you talk about how collaboration is really essential in a matchmaking partnership. We can't just go to a matchmaker and expect them to solve all of our dating woes and find these mysterious people. But that being said, they absolutely can be an incredible resource. And I think the biggest gift is seeing some of the stuff that we talked around, temperament and different compatibility levels, things that we may not be thinking about on our own, that a matchmaker has their years of history of doing this. And in your case, generations of history. So I think looking at that alternative as a compliment and not necessarily as the silver bullet that you just give this list of every last trait you've ever desired in a partner and expect this magical person to appear, but still that it is a very great way to meet someone that could be an incredible match.
I love that. Thank you for those takeaways.
And you mentioned choice, Julie, and that was my main takeaway is we define choice very differently. Yeah. We think choice is this privilege we have to have many choices, but I like the way you're describing it, Maria. It's having agency. It's making a choice and then doing something about that choice. So it's very different from I want to have all these choices presented in front of me because I'm entitled to that versus I have the choice to do something about the choices in front of me. What's the point of having all these choices if I'm not acting on them?
Exactly.
So love that. And then my second takeaway is to find the best match for you. We really have to know ourselves first and foremost. And we tend to be very quick to describe what we're looking for because that's easier than actually going from us as at the center and then talking about what's the best suitable for me, knowing who I am. So I think that's the work that a lot of us are doing, started doing, should be doing. It's just getting more solid on who we are.
The other last takeaway I had is we share this similar belief to you, Maria, of like scare them away. Every person doesn't need to be your match at the end of the day. It's almost better to, show yourself, learn upfront, and be able to say goodbye. So I think what you were saying earlier of like, not every person needs to get to 12 dates. That's okay. That's a win if you aren't spending 6 months with someone and you can figure out earlier if they're the right person for you. So I think I just want to leave people remembering that like if things don't work out, that's actually a positive because it lets you be on to that person that could be incredible for you instead of wasting time with the wrong people.
Yeah.
And your book, which is not a waste of time, Ask a Matchmaker. Where
just
can
realized
people
our
find
books are
it?
the same color.
They are. They're perfect
we love this
compliments.
color.
Yes.
It's teal. Where can people find your book?
My book is everywhere. You can find it at Bookshop, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can also find it on Spotify and Audible if you are an audiobook listener. I drank a lot of honey when I was recording it, so it sounds way smoother than what I sound like today.
Awesome. Well, people should definitely pick it up. There's so much more that we didn't even have time to fully unpack. And thank you again, though, for being here and sharing your knowledge so people kind of get that sneak peek and then learn a bit more about matchmaking. Because I know a lot of people are like, what happens in matchmaking? Is it something I want to pursue? And I think this was super helpful.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Julie, and you.
So for our listeners, if you are searching for Maria's book, you might as well also go to your favorite podcast platform and find both of our podcasts. And you can give us 5 stars, rating a review, and maybe in the body of the review, tell us what you learned from this episode. What is something that you are going to incorporate into your love life based on this conversation we had with Maria today? And we'll read some of them on air in upcoming episodes. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. Stay dateable.